Welcome back, aviators. I'm Holly Bolino, your host of the Aviator's Guide Novice to Pilot. I'm sure you are all very busy prepping for this long Labor Day weekend. Maybe some of you are packing or even already on the road. So thanks for dropping in to listen to my podcast today. On this glorious Friday, we are covering a simple yet integral topic for beginning your aviation adventure: back to school shopping. Did anyone else just get a flashback of buying new pencils, cool backpacks, and clothes? I always did enjoy picking out brand new, colorful notebooks, fun pens, and stylish clothes for a brand new year of learning. Yes, I'm a nerd, always have been, always will be. Well, buying supplies for flight school can be fun and interesting, and depending on the flight school you attend, they may even provide you the supplies for a fee, of course. If y'all remember, back in episode 2, Should You Be a Pilot, I covered some important questions you should be asking flight schools when researching where you want to go. And I even made a PDF list of those questions for you guys. Now you can go back and watch episode 2, and if you're a new aviator, I highly recommend it, but I will also attach a PDF link for those questions I made in the show notes of this episode. One of the questions on that list is just what we're talking about today. When it comes to supplies, you want to ask the flight school you're attending if they offer them, how much they cost, and which ones they include, because it may be cheaper for you to go off and buy them on your own. My flight school charged me $6,402.50 for all of my books and supplies. That may seem like a lot, because it is. I think that price probably includes the polos, button up shirts, tie, and epaulets they made us wear for our uniform, but I was never able to confirm that. Also, $1,700 of that $6,400 total was for a fifth generation iPad mini with 64 gigabytes. Today, you can get a iPad mini 6th generation with 256 gigabytes for $530. So I'm not really sure where that $1,700 number comes from. I'm still upset with myself for not even asking how much everything was going to cost when I could have bought it all on my own for much less. Don't let yourself get overcharged like I did, but then again, I didn't know the right questions to ask. And I had no idea which supplies I needed or where to even get them. Regardless, I made all the mistakes, so hopefully you guys don't have to. There are lots of supplies to talk about, so I'm actually going to break this episode down into 2 parts. This being part 1, and part 2 will come out next Friday, so be sure to come back and listen to that for the rest of the pertinent supplies that you will need for your flight training. I put all of the links for every single item that I will be talking about today in a PDF, and I put that PDF link in the show notes. All right, so beginning with the price to your items first, let's dive into the supplies that you will need, starting with, in my opinion, the most fun purchase: your headset. These are also a very important purchase as you will be using them every single flight. You need a good pair so you can transmit and receive communications clearly. And remember, you'll be using this headset after you're done with the flight school, so why not go ahead and get a good pair that will last for hopefully years to come? There are many headsets from which to choose, but I think you should just buy the best and be done with it. In my opinion, Bose is the best, but they can be pretty pricey at around $1,000 a set. I really do think they're worth it though, and no, this isn't a Bose advertisement. I just really like them, but hey, Bose, if you're listening, sponsor me. I have used both the over-ear and in-ear version of the Bose, but I prefer the in-ear version. And that's only because after wearing the headset for so long, it just begins to hurt the outside of my ears, which is really true for all over-ear headsets anyway. However, Bose did come out with a newer headset recently, and they're a little bit larger, so they don't sit right on your ear, but literally over your entire ear, and these are much more comfortable. The older Bose are called the A20, and the newer ones that are larger that I was just talking about are the A30, but the A30s are a little bit more pricey at around $1,300, whereas the A20s are at the $1,000 price range. The in-ear version I was talking about from Bose is called the ProFlight Series 2, and it comes with 3 different size earpieces so you can see which one fits your ear best. Bose also has a CFI rebate program where if you buy an A30 or ProFlight Series 2 headset, then you will get $100 back. And what does CFI mean, guys? That's right, Certified Flight Instructor. So once you become a flight instructor, you can take advantage of this rebate program, and the link to that program is in the Flight School Supplies PDF link in the show notes. If you're looking for a more budget-friendly headset, I have heard good things about David Clark and Lightspeed, but I have personally never used them. Both David Clark and Lightspeed have a few different models, and the prices of them do vary depending on which one you get. The headset my flight school bestowed upon me was called Faro, Faro. To say the least, I wouldn't recommend them. Maybe they have newer versions out nowadays that are better, but I'm very happy with my headset that I have. It wasn't until I wore my first set of Bose that I realized hearing radio calls should be easy. I went all throughout flight school struggling to hear the comms, and it's all because I just needed a different headset. I literally remember the first moment I heard the radios wearing Bose instead of Faros, and it was night and day, guys. I felt unstoppable. I felt like Jasmine being shown a whole new world by Aladdin. I felt like a brand new pilot. Comms, meaning radios, are hard enough for new pilots to grasp quickly, so do yourself a favor and get a good headset. And a few extra headset tidbits for you guys. When you are buying your headset, make sure you get one that is dual plug because this is the type of plug that most aircraft use. Also, dual plug headsets are very common in aviation, so it's going to be easy for you to get some. Also, having a headset with ANR, active noise reduction, also known as active noise canceling, can be super handy to make sure that those radio calls are coming in clearly. And if you find a headset with Bluetooth, it sure is nice, but really not necessary. I just like jamming out to my tunes and being able to connect my phone. A second rather large expense is going to be an iPad. If you don't already have one, you will need one. You will be using it just about every day in flight school. I prefer having the iPad mini because it's the perfect size to have in your lap or mounted in the airplane without getting in the way. If you already have an iPad that's the next size up, like the 9.7 inch or 10.5 inch iPad Pro, that should be fine too. But if it's any bigger, it's potentially just going to be annoying when you're in the aircraft. When getting your iPad, you can get some renewed ones on Amazon for pretty cheap. But whichever one you get, make sure that it has plenty of storage, like 256 gigabytes worth of storage. I will explain why you want this in a little bit. Along with your iPad, you're going to need a case. You don't need to get all crazy and buy an expensive case, but if you want to, go for it. I did put a case that I use into the PDF that I made for you guys. I've had my case for a little bit over 2 years and it's doing just fine, just a little bit frayed, and I like it for a lot of reasons. I like it because it's lightweight. It has protected my iPad when I have inevitably dropped it. It has a clear back so I can display my medical and pilot certificates, also meaning I will never forget those when I'm flying because I don't fly without my iPad. It's a cheap case and it's done me good. If you are looking for something a little bit more fancy, there's a brand out there called Pivot. That's all the rage right now. They have also attachments for it for you to mount it on your knee as well as in the aircraft. They look pretty versatile and handy, but they are $80 to $150 a case. Whichever case you get, make sure there's a spot for your iPad stylus pen. I honestly did not use a stylus pen or Apple Pencil all throughout flight school, but now I use one very consistently. As an instructor, it's really nice to have in the plane as well, so I can use it to take notes on students' progress, so I'm not fumbling through papers on the plane. Note this, if you buy a second generation Apple Pencil, make sure the case you get is capable of magnetically charging that pencil. It is the only pencil or stylus in the show notes that charges that way. And if you let that second generation Apple Pencil just hang out on the outside of that iPad without a case in it, you will potentially drop it and even lose it in the aircraft or somewhere else. Ask me how I know. That's why you want a case with a pencil holder. Another expensive item that you will need is called ForeFlight. This is an app that you will probably use for the rest of your piloting career, depending on where you go. And you will use it for just about everything from FAA resources and flight planning to weather and airport information. It's an awesome app, but it comes at a price. There are 3 plans you can get. The basic plan at $120 per year, the Pro Plus plan at $240 per year, and the Performance Plus plan at $360 a year. During flight school, you don't really need anything other than the basic plan, so save yourself some cash and just get that one. When you get yourself a pilot job, feel free to upgrade at any time. It's easy to do. Do you remember when I mentioned a second ago that you're going to want an iPad with a lot of storage? Well, this is the reason. ForeFlight is hungry and eats up a lot of space. And the more states in which you fly, the more storage space it's going to eat up. So you may not use much space during flight school depending on where you fly, but if you're planning on keeping that iPad for longer than flight school, you may want to get one with more space when you decide to go to other places. Something else to note that frustrates a lot of people is ForeFlight is only compatible with Apple products. Oh, I know. I'm so sorry to all of you Android users out there. I actually know a lot of Android users who have switched over to Apple just so they can have ForeFlight on their phone as well as their iPad, because ForeFlight allows you to log into 2 devices at a time. And it really is nice to have ForeFlight on both your iPad and your phone. Once you've dropped all those bills on your ForeFlight iPad and headset, you can let the sweat on your forehead dry and let your credit card take a little breather, because the next supplies that you will need are not nearly as expensive. The next item may sound pricey, but it's really not too bad, and it's called a flight computer. This is just a fancy calculator to help you compute certain items of flight, taking wind, temperature, and density into consideration. Honestly, you will use a flight computer a lot during flight school, especially for your written exams and your check rides, but once you leave school, not so much. So if you can find a secondhand one, just do that. There are 3 main types of flight computers, and I'm going to start with the most old-fashioned and inexpensive one, and that's called the Mechanical E6B. This guy goes for about $40, maybe less depending on the material it's made from, and it can look really confusing until you're taught how to use it. The probability of you using this type of calculator just depends on your flight school and your instructor. I was only briefly taught how to use this one in flight school, and as an instructor, I haven't taught it to any of my students. But if you want to check it out, there's a free version of this flight computer called Flight Computer Sim. So see what you think. The second most expensive calculator runs at around $80, and it's the Sporty's Electronic E6B. Sporty's is a pilot-centric website that you'll probably use at one point or another. This E6B does everything that the mechanical E6B does, just digitally. This is the calculator I have used to teach all of my students since it gets the job done. This one has its own app as well called Sporty's E6B Flight Computer, and you can get it for $10. The third flight computer, and the most expensive at around $120, and my favorite, is the CX3 computer. I feel like this is the most user-friendly of the 3, and it's the one I've used throughout flight school, so I'm just used to it. But the Sporty's E6B works really well too, so just use that one if you want to save a little bit of money. And guess what? The CX3 has an app too. It's called CX3 Flight Computer, and it's also $10. I haven't personally used any of the flight computer apps for the phone, but I know people who have used the Sporty's one, and they say it's pretty good. While it's very cool that all these flight computers have their own app for your phone, and that there are actually a lot of flight computer apps out there, you can't take your phone into a written exam. You have to use an actual flight computer. Most locations where you do your written exam will provide you with some sort of flight computer, but you should double check that they do, and if you have a preference, just bring your own. I included all the links for these flight computers as well as their identical apps for Android and Apple in the PDF I made, the link to which is in the show notes. Another item that you will need for your written exams that you will probably not ever once in your life use outside of flight school is called the plotter. This little gadget is pretty handy when planning your cross-country flights in school, and really is quite simple to use when finding your true course and mileage between points. Speaking of a plotter, you may want to get yourself a paper VFR sectional chart. This sectional chart is really just a tool pilots use to help us navigate when flying VFR, or visual flight rules. It shows you a myriad of features such as terrain, man-made obstacles, airspace boundaries, and airport information. Even though you will need to become very familiar with the information that is on these, you don't really have to buy a paper one, as you can get all the information on them in ForeFlight. Also, your written exam prep book will have samples of the sectional chart to help you study. And it's just easier to use the plotter on these paper charts than on your iPad. If you do want to buy a paper version, it can be very helpful when first learning how to use and read these charts. If you decide you do want to buy a chart, make sure it's for your geographical area. And if you want to use one on your check ride, make sure it is up to date. Never go into a check ride with out-of-date material. This may not make sense, but there is a sectional chart map that shows which main city is the title of that sectional chart. For example, the VFR sectional chart for Dallas, Texas encompasses most of Oklahoma, and the VFR sectional chart for Houston encompasses a lot of Louisiana. I put some links for sectional charts in the PDF I made to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And if you click on the link for the Dallas chart, there is a map showing you the details of the coverage areas. If you want to see what these sectional charts look like, you can go to skyvector.com. That's SKYVECTOR.com. This is a really cool and free aviation website that will allow you to see these sectional charts along with other charts you will be using. You can also see information about airports from all over the world. It sure is nice being able to learn to be a pilot with all this information at your fingertips. Something else that you might need that ties in with your plotter and sectional chart is paper navigation logs, aka nav logs. I say you might need this because just like your flight computer, it depends on your flight school and your instructor. These are to help you plan your longer flights in flight school in terms of how long the flight should take, headings and fuel you'll use, and checkpoints along the way. When I was in flight school, I was taught how to use ForeFlight to my advantage, as ForeFlight makes these nav logs for you. But you do need to understand all the information that you need to give ForeFlight to make these logs and how to interpret them. Paper nav logs can be helpful in demonstrating to pilots how winds can affect your course along the way, but I personally never taught my students paper nav logs, and they all did great. Also, no DPE, meaning designated pilot examiner, that I use for check rides while I was in flight school or since I've been out of it, has ever asked for a paper nav log because they are not required to have a paper nav log. For your check ride, you just have to have a nav log completed, and that's where ForeFlight comes in. The beauty of technology. The last item I'm going to bring up today that you may or may not want is called a knee board. This is just a device that you strap to your thigh that will hold items such as pens, paper, and your iPad. Some pilots use them, some don't. It's up to you. There are lots of brands that you can buy, but if you did choose to buy that Pivot iPad case, you may want to get the Pivot knee board or knee board adapter as well. But again, there are plenty of cheaper options out there. I used a knee board all throughout my pilot training. However, since I've been finished with flight school and became a flight instructor and do contract flying, I haven't used one once. Maybe just because as an instructor, you're in and out of the plane so much, it's a pain to keep taking it on and off. But it really just depends on what you want. So maybe try it out and see if you like it. Well, guys, that's the end of Flight School Supplies Part 1. Meet me back here next Friday to see Part 2, as we still have plenty of items to discuss that you need to get for flight school. Y'all stick with it, stay awesome, and enjoy your weekend. And don't forget to help me help you by following, rating, and reviewing this podcast. And if you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. Stay safe this weekend, and I'll see you later, aviators.